Adrian and Celine's visits became the bright spots in my weeks. They arrived in their gleaming car, always smiling, bringing new gifts each time. Sometimes they'd stay for hours, sitting in my living room, telling stories of their travels, and promising a bright future for my mother and me. They called me family, said they'd make sure we'd never struggle again. At first, it felt like a dream. They came to every doctor's appointment, asked thoughtful questions, and held my hand when the doctor showed the ultrasound. Adrian wiped away a tear the first time he heard the baby's heartbeat. Celine stroked my hair and told me I was giving them the most precious gift imaginable. I thought, maybe my mother will see I made the right choice. Then, slowly, something changed. Their visits became shorter. Then they started missing appointments entirely, sending polite texts to say they were caught up in meetings, or had an urgent trip abroad. Days passed without a single message. I'd stare at my phone late into the night, rereading old chats where they called me their angel. The more they disappeared, the heavier the silence grew between my mother and me. She rarely spoke now, conserving every breath. When she did, it was usually to apologize for being a burden. I told her to stop, that she was my reason for everything, but the words felt hollow when I couldn't promise her things were getting better. One evening, I was cleaning the kitchen when my phone buzzed. I grabbed it, heart leaping. Maybe it was Adrian or Celine finally checking in, but it was only a spam message. I sank to the floor, pressing my forehead against the cold tile. The loneliness was suffocating. Meanwhile, my belly grew heavier by the day. The baby's kicks became stronger. Each movement reminded me time was running out, and I still hadn't seen Adrian or Celine in weeks. I tried calling their numbers. Sometimes they rang. Sometimes they went straight to voicemail. Other times, I'd get a cold automated response. This number is not available. I called the surrogacy agency, but they told me they had no recent contact with the couple and couldn't help me further. Mrs. Kadiri, our elderly neighbor, checked in often, bringing soups or helping me lift my mother to change the bed sheets. She'd sit on the edge of my mother's bed, humming old songs while I rested. Sometimes, I caught her watching me with worried eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her everything. Then came the night my mother's breathing grew ragged. Her eyes fluttered open, clouded and unfocused. I sat beside her, holding her hand, whispering that everything would be okay, that once the baby was born, I'd have the money, and we could afford the best doctors. But even as I spoke, I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe me anymore. "Promise me," she rasped. "You'll live your own life, alone." I promised, but I don't know if she heard me. She slipped back into a restless sleep, each breath sounding like it could be her last. I spent the next nights tossing and turning, nightmares swirling in my head. I dreamed of giving birth alone in the dark, of people coming to snatch the baby from my arms, of my mother calling out to me from somewhere I couldn't reach. Every morning, I woke up drenched in sweat, whispering desperate prayers into the room. By now, I was so heavy I could barely move without gasping for breath. Mrs. Kadiri came daily, helping me cook simple meals and tending to my mother. She never asked about Adrian and Celine, but I could see the concern etched into her kind face. One afternoon, as I napped beside my mother, I felt a deep, sharp pain ripple through my belly. I woke up breathless. The pains came faster, closer together. Panic set in as I realized the baby was coming. I called Mrs. Kadiri, voice shaking. She arrived in minutes, while her daughter stayed behind to watch over my mother. We hurried to the hospital, my contractions growing unbearable. Through the haze of pain, I kept thinking, where are Adrian and Celine? Why aren't they here? I told myself they'd come any moment, that they'd burst into the delivery room smiling, ready to take the baby they'd longed for. But in my heart, I felt something cracking. I knew I was standing on the edge of something terrible. The hospital lights felt blinding as they wheeled me into the delivery room. The pain was like a tidal wave, crashing over me again and again. Between contractions, I kept glancing at the door, praying I'd see Adrian or Celine appear, smiling and ready to keep their promises. They never came. Hours later, after screams and tears and blood, I gave one final push. A cry rang out, a tiny, fierce sound that made the world go silent. The nurse placed my daughter in my arms, her skin warm and soft. In that moment, despite everything, I felt love so deep it terrified me. I looked at the clock on the wall, marking the time of her birth, 3:47 a.m. I whispered her name to her, even though I knew she might not be mine for long. Some hours later, the nurse returned, her expression grave. She said there was a phone call for me. Confused and weak, I handed my baby to a nurse and answered the call, heart pounding. You won't believe what happened next. Type next for part 3.